Probability of an event is generally expressed as a fraction. It's the number of outcomes that are favorable to a particular event over the total number of outcomes in the sample space. The probability that an event will not happen is a fraction consisting of the number of outcomes that are not favorable to the event over the number of outcomes in the sample space. Now, odds, on the other hand, odds for an event occurring, generally expressed as a ratio of the favorable outcomes to the unfavorable outcomes. Odds against that event occurring, again, as a ratio, would be the outcomes that are unfavorable to that event to the number of outcomes that are favorable to that event. So let's consider the experiment of rolling a single die. The sample space would be the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All the things that could happen when you roll a single die. Now, if we wanted to find the probability of rolling a 5, it's going to be a fraction consisting of the favorable outcomes that are favorable to getting a 5 over the total number of outcomes. Well, there's only one outcome that's favorable to getting a 5 out of the 6 that are in the sample space. Now, odds against rolling a 5, that would be a ratio of the unfavorable outcomes to the favorable outcomes. So favorable to getting a 5, we said there was just one because there's only one 5. So unfavorable would be all the rest. So our ratio would be 5 to 1, the odds against rolling a 5. Now, odds in favor of rolling a 5, it's a ratio of the favorable outcomes to the unfavorable outcomes. I can just take the odds against and turn it around. 1 that was favorable to the 5 that were unfavorable. So a single card is selected from a 52-card deck. Let's first determine the probability of selecting a king. In a 52-card deck, 4 of the cards are going to be kings. So there are 4 cards that are favorable to getting a king out of the 52 cards in the deck. So favorable over total. Now we know all fractions have to be reduced to lowest terms. So 1 over 13. Now odds in favor of getting a king. That's going to be a ratio, favorable outcomes to unfavorable. All right, let's go back and look at our probability. We said probability is favorable over total. So from the reduced fraction for part A, we see that there's one outcome that's favorable. Unfavorable would be all the rest. So the total was 13. Subtract the favorable one. So 1 to 12. Now, if the odds against Joe winning a certain game is 7 to 2, that means, using the definition for odds against, that there were 7 outcomes that were unfavorable to 2 that were favorable. So to convert that to a probability, what I need is a fraction consisting of the favorable over the total. Okay, so there were 2 that were favorable, and the total would be the unfavorable plus the favorable. So 2 to 9, 2 over 9. So to find the probability that Joe will not win the game, when we know the probability of something not happening can be found by just saying 1 minus the probability that it will. That's the complements formula. So the probability that he will not win is 1 minus the probability that he will win. So get 7/9. Now, the probability that a certain business venture will be successful is given as 0.7. I'm going to write that as a fraction. Now, since it's a probability, the fraction is favorable over total. So to convert that to odds against, we know that to be a ratio of unfavorable outcomes to favorable. So I'll do the favorable first. We said there were 7 that were favorable. So unfavorable would be all the rest, would be the total minus the favorable. So I get 3 to 7.